You ever feel like you're missing something in a conversation, even when no one is saying a word? Well, that's because there's a silent language we all use, but very few of us, especially men, truly understand it. And that's the language of touch. Today, we're digging into the psychology behind physical contact, a powerful, powerful form of communication that, according to our source material, gets misinterpreted all the time.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to define this silent language and talk about why it gets so mixed up. Then, we'll get into the absolute bedrock of this whole thing, trust. After that, we'll map out 4 specific zones of intimacy. Then we'll reveal what the source calls the ultimate zone. And finally, we'll pull it all together to see this not as a set of moves, but as a conversation that happens completely without words.
Okay, let's kick things off with a big problem here, which is a massive misunderstanding of physical signals. You know, it's not just about what you do, it's about what that action communicates on a deep subconscious and totally instinctive level.
And it's worth taking a second to ask yourself this directly. How fluent are you really? Do you know the subtle difference between a touch that just says, "Hey, we're friends," and one that communicates, "I trust you completely"? That distinction, well, it's everything.
Now, get this. The source material claims a staggering 90% of men completely misread these nonverbal cues. Look at that gap between how many men think they get it and how many actually do. That gap right there, that's where so many opportunities for genuine human connection just vanish into thin air.
So to start decoding this language, the source gives us a framework. It's called the hierarchical zones of trust. The basic idea is that a woman's body is kind of like a map with different territories. And each territory you enter is like opening an emotional portal to a deeper level of trust and access. See, not all touch is created equal, not by a long shot.
So before we even start looking at the map itself, we have to lay the groundwork. And I gotta say, this next part is absolutely critical. This isn't about learning some simple trick or technique. It's all about the intention behind the touch. This quote really gets to the heart of it. A simple touch is described as this big chemical and neurological event. Her brain doesn't just feel a hand. Her entire nervous system is instantly scanning, analyzing the emotional data coming from that person. Are they safe? Are they genuine? Are they nervous? So here's the bottom line. Your internal state is literally broadcast through your skin. Any insecurity, any confidence, any authenticity, it's all transmitted in that split second of contact. That means how you touch, and frankly, who you are in that moment is way, way more important than where you touch. Okay, with that foundation firmly in place, now we can start exploring the map. We're gonna walk through the 4 main zones of intimacy, step by step, starting with the most casual and working our way to the most profound.
Our journey starts in Zone 1, the arms and shoulders. Just think of this as the social handshake zone. It's the most common, most neutral, and most socially acceptable place for casual contact, which makes it the natural starting point. And the meaning here is pretty simple: safety. Getting access to this zone basically communicates, okay, you're not a threat. But the source really stresses this is neutral ground. It's not a sign of attraction. It's more like an initial vibe check, a subconscious way for her to feel out your confidence and your energy before anything else can happen. All right, moving inward from that neutral territory, we get to Zone 2, the hands and wrists. And this is where a pretty big shift starts to happen. We're moving away from basic social acceptance and taking the first real steps toward genuine intimacy.
I mean, think about it. Our hands are how we express ourselves, how we interact with the world. So when she lets you hold her hand, it's more than just physical contact. She's handing over a bit of control and inviting a real connection. The wrist is even more telling. It's a vulnerable area, biologically. So allowing touch there, that signals a growing level of trust and comfort with you being there.
Next up, we've got Zone 3, the waist and the lower back. And this is a major leap in intimacy. Unlike her hands or arms, this is a much more central, more personal part of her body. Touching her here requires a much higher level of established trust.
The reason this is such a big deal is that it requires a deeper, more instinctive kind of trust. She can't see her hand on her lower back. That means her acceptance is based purely on her feeling of safety with you. If she leans into it instead of tensing up, her body is non-verbally screaming that she accepts your presence and maybe even your protection.
Now for our 4th and final primary zone, the neck and the face. The source material calls this sacred territory, and honestly, for very good reason.
Psychologically, this zone carries so much weight. The neck is one of our most vulnerable spots, biologically speaking. And the face, well, the face is literally her identity to the world. To be allowed to touch her here is to be given a sign of profound, almost primal trust. It's huge. But hold on. According to the source, there's actually one zone that lies even beyond these 4. A place where, it's suggested, psychological defenses just collapse and a state of total surrender is reached. And that ultimate zone is her hair. Now,
I know, it might not seem that obvious at first, but hair is described as this incredibly potent symbol of femininity, identity, and emotional expression. We all touch our own hair when we're nervous or interested or flirting. It's deeply personal.
And this quote just captures it perfectly. When a woman lets a man touch her hair, she is giving up control over a deeply personal symbol of who she is. It's this act of handing over something that, almost exclusively, she and only she manages.
And the real key is the reaction. The source says to look for these totally involuntary signs, like she tilts her head into your hand, or closes her eyes, or lets out a soft sigh. These aren't conscious choices she's making. They're described as pure nervous system reactions that signal a state of complete safety, a kind of chemical surrender.
So, after that entire journey through all these zones, let's just pull back for a second and look at the big picture. What is the real point of this map? This is so important. The source is absolutely adamant that this framework is not a tool for conquest. It's not a manual for manipulation or a series of buttons to push. The real goal here is to learn how to listen to a silent conversation, to better understand the signals that are already being sent, totally non-verbally.
And really, that brings us to the final thought. This map isn't about planning your next move, it's about being more aware of her response. It completely reframes the whole interaction from one of just doing to one of observing and, most importantly, listening. So the real question to leave you with is this. Now that you know the map, what will you start listening for?